Hello, and welcome to the Self-Care with Herbs segment of the Elder Tree podcast. I'm your host, Jess Bosker, naturopath, herbalist, and medicine maker. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the Banjalang people, the traditional custodians of the land on which I live, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Now, come along and join me each month for beautiful conversations with guests from across the country, exploring ways we can weave plant medicine into our days to enrich our experience of self-care, sharing routines, rituals, and recipes for elevating mind, body, and spirit. During this episode, it was a real joy to dive into honouring the cycles of our bodies, Mother Earth, and the phases of life we journey through. I chat with earth medicine woman, women's health advocate, and cyclical guide Amanda Trieger about how these cycles can help us weave self-care into daily rituals by being prepared and understanding what we need at different phases of our lives, our menstrual cycle, and during each season. It was a bit of an epiphany for Amanda when she realised that tucking self-care around the edges of her life wasn't going to be sustainable. She noticed dramatic shifts when her understanding of her menstrual cycle began to drive her self-care, allowing her to plan out a month of self-care rhythms. Amanda works with women in many different capacities and loves bridging the gap between ancient plant wisdom and womancraft traditions in the modern world, guiding women to reclaim self-care as a sacred, integrated practice. Grounded in earth medicine and a powerful advocate for the well-being of girls, women, and people assigned female at birth, she tends to her wild garden at the Morpeth Convent, gathering herbs for rituals such as yoni steaming, teas to nourish womb wellness, and cyclical well-being. As a naturopath, doula, and mentor, Amanda guides women to reclaim feminine frameworks and integrate the healing power of plant medicine into their cyclical self-care rituals. Her work supports hormonal well-being, vaginal microbiome health, vulva care, and raising awareness of the sacred rites of passage that shape a woman's journey. Through rituals, retreats, workshops, and women's circles, she empowers women to cultivate cycle awareness, honouring the rhythms of their menstrual, lunar, seasonal, and life cycles as they transition through the menstruality timeline. Amanda generously shares her knowledge on cyclical living during this episode, and I hope you enjoy it as much as we did. Hello, Amanda, and welcome to the Self-Care with Herbs segment of the Elder Tree. It is such a pleasure to have you here this morning.
So fabulous to be here. It's such a great way to end the week, chatting about herbs, one of my favourite things.
Aren't we lucky? And even though this won't be released on Valentine's Day, we're recording on Valentine's Day. So what a beautiful way to celebrate love, talking about self-care.
And so essential, particularly for women, which is really my focus of self-care and how we layer self-care into a cycle, whether that's our menstrual cycle, our lunar cycle, our seasonal cycle, our yearly birth cycle, or whether it's within our life phase cycle. And that changed everything for me when I started using self-care rather than as a tool for picking myself back up or staying solid, as an actual framework within my cycle. Everything started to shift and change, which is really
I'm so excited to dive into this with you, Amanda. What I'd really love to hear from you first, though, is where did your relationship with plant medicine begin? Let's go right back to the beginning.
Yeah, gosh, I was the little fairy quirky child who was called the tree hugger, who lived in the middle of the country and was this little fairy child that loved all of her plants. So one of my first memories is in the kitchen smashing up the oats to make oatmeal scrubs and going into the garden to talk to the fairies and collect the herbs and make my teas and tinctures and potions. It was really this core memory of being connected with earth medicine. And that's probably my earliest memory of how working with herbs and plants began. It was play and creation and being really intuitively led. I lost a lot of that being appropriate and growing up and becoming what I was meant to be as a young woman in the country. And it wasn't until I had a lot of health conditions coming up, like recurrent bladder infections and just issues of nervous system dysfunction, that now looking back on it is really clear to see what was going on. But when you're in it and in puberty and in transition and becoming, it was a old Scottish auntie that had come out randomly. I've never met her before, and she had looked at me and said, "Oh, you're not taking cranberry? You're not taking like uber earthy? You're not using some herbs? Like, come and I'll get you some herbs. They're really easy." And really quickly got me sorted and happy and off antibiotics, and gave me some really simple tips and tools for herbal medicine that changed the trajectory of my well-being and just really realigned me with the understanding that I had everything that I needed, and I just needed to know where to look to source that information. And that led me at the same trip. The same trip I met her, we went up to Lismore and Byron, and we took her through Nimbin. It's a random visit. But yeah, and I went through Lismore and fell in love with the space, and then found out that's where the Bachelor of Naturopathy was held. And it was that moment of understanding my path and knowing where to from here. And it's all just flowed from there.
Oh, that's beautiful, Amanda. I love hearing that story of you in the garden, just absolutely connected, and then that light bulb moment with your beautiful relative. Wow. Imagine if that sliding door moment hadn't occurred.
Yeah, and I was appropriate. I had a good job managing one of the local stores. I was teaching fitness. I was still within the health realm, but I was, yeah, unfulfilled and searching. Just that longing of knowing that there is something else really calling to you, and not having, I guess, the knowledge of where to turn to that, or it being normalized in my community. There was lots of doctors and nurses and teachers and farmers, and it's a very mining community as well where I grew up, and quirky witchy herbalism was kind of on the outskirts and the edges. So we had some amazing experiences. My mum had connected me in with some kinesiologists that had come. Like, we were always seeking out the quirky, like the chiropractor used to come and do chiropractic care in the local hotel because there was no clinic space anywhere. So such a transformation now in that same space. I went back and ran a wellness centre for years. That was so well received and loved. So yeah, it's beautiful to watch the evolution of space, but it those sliding door moments, those moments of like angelic tap on the shoulder of like, are you paying attention? Yeah, really grateful for how that has shaped my path, because it has just been the most beautiful path towards healing for myself, for my generational red thread, and for what comes through into my family and further through now into the community and client care as well.
We had some lovely conversations before we hit record about what self-care means for you, and how honouring cycles in all of their different forms is so important towards your understanding of an application of self-care. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I think self-care for me, like so many other women, particularly that I know, is something that we sort of tuck around the edge to make sure that we don't fall off the edge, or when we're getting sick, we put some extra self-care, or it's this like designated time of self-care. And self-care is the most radical act of self-love. And I love that we're recording this on Valentine's Day, because radical self-love is how I now approach self-care, because the understanding that laid in for me that success or achievement or being productive is only possible for me if I'm truly providing self-care and from a cyclical rhythm. Because when I was putting it in reactively rather than really putting it within my own feminine framework, because I have ovaries that are active, so from week to week to week to week, I go through big shifts and changes of what type of self-care I need, what nutrition I might need, what herbal medicine I might use, what practices I might bring in. That all shifted dramatically when the understanding of cycle that drives that. So now when I think about my self-care, I plan out a month of self-care rhythms. And self-care for me might be, particularly in the time of life that I've just come from, a decade of 15 years of little people and big needs. Sometimes it was my bright pink headphones on with my music when I was cooking dinner, because that was self-care and love for me. It was dropping my nervous system down. It was supporting my own well-being. And the biggest radical act of self-care that I've ever done is daily check-ins. Just that 1%, 1 minute a day, really checking in with just me, not anybody else's needs first. So that's where it's come from for me.
That's beautiful. A real evolution from, as you said, like it really just being on the edges to actually being weaved in to your day to day and planned for.
I think the micro moments
Yes.
are more essential in my self-care rhythm than the big self-care things that, we've been advertised or talked to. So it's the ability to choose the herbs for the day. It's the ability to communicate with my family, where I am up to within my cycle, not only of the menstrual cycle, which is my most powerful driver right now, but also bringing their awareness into like lunar rhythms. And it's the middle of summer or it's the middle of winter, and how does that feel different, and what sorts of things are our bodies really searching for and our hearts and souls needing within that stage of evolution. And sometimes self-care is a little bit uncomfortable, putting the moments of journaling in there and reflection and integration and being able to be in those moments as you need them as well.
Mm-hmm. I imagine that time of check-in is a way of listening in to the whispers that you start to hear when particular types of self-care are needed. What sorts of whispers for you do you notice in those check-in moments, and how do they change on a cyclical basis?
My biggest whisper is so interesting. It's watering my garden. That's the thing that tells me how on track I am or not. So how much time have I spent in my garden? Am I using it as a coping mechanism, or am I using it as a joyful? Usually if it's joyful, it's in the morning and I'm like, oh, the birds are all out and I'm sorting all my plants. I'm loving everything. If it's a coping mechanism, it's last thing at night. I'm out there with the watering hose and I can feel what's happening with the earth and my body. The whispers that really help me to understand, and I guess this is where my cycle awareness practice comes in, because my check-in, my journaling process begins with what cycle day am I on, what's arising, how am I experiencing this, and what is my level of need right now. Like, where am I on the self-care capacity? Am I taking time out of home activities? And I'm deeply grateful for the wisdom that I hold now, that I usually prepare for these times. So the week before, when I'm on, I've done more. I've prepped, I've organised, I've been superwoman, so that I have the grace to be able to put a few things off or finish some things later and give myself some breathing space. But the whispers really get loud if I'm in the productivity, if I'm in the doing, if I'm in the superwoman phase, the hyper independence for too long. The creative, the birthing, the producing, the bit that everything's shiny. And I don't listen to those whispers of, hey, you're not sleeping very well. Hey, your brain's fast. Oh, you've had a lot of coffee this week. Maybe use the tea instead. So the journaling practice, the cycle awareness really helps me go, oh, wow, I'm day 23. I need to put these practices in place as a priority now so that I can prepare for my next cycle. 3 months of, how we experience this cycle is set 3 months before. So it's not always something that I can immediately do. But having the awareness of what I need, it saved so many of my relationship issues because I can be really direct and I can lose all my fluff and empathy when my estrogen also starts to drop down. And my family feels that dramatic change in my boundaries and in the amount of care that I can give to them, because I feel like my energy leaks out more in those times. So that's where my cup fillers come up, in those times when I need to let go of the guilt and the shame and all of the other triggers that I think as a child were groomed into us around taking time for yourself and really deeply nurturing yourself, that is an essential part of well-being rather than wait till you get sick.
Mm. Yeah. The ability to be a little bit proactive and have some planning in place just provides such a beautiful buffer, huh?
And we need it more as we go through different seasons.
Yeah.
Rites of passage, like being a mother with no sleep for a decade. There's more that I need for self-care. There's a different regime of herbs that I use. There's a different support from breath workers and float tanks and swimming in the ocean and being in my garden and crocheting and the things that really bring me back to connection with me and calm my nervous system to help me process through whatever shifts and changes are coming in, so I can even just hear what my self-care needs are.
Absolutely. I love that idea, Amanda, that, if we are able to invest and it is woven into our days, as you said, then we can hear what we need. Otherwise, we're so busy and so overwhelmed that we can't even listen in to ourselves.
Yeah. And I've got the most amazing group of women around me. And every Friday we go for a coffee, and who knows who's there. It's just the place that we meet, that whoever is there that needs it gets it. And some days we're all fabulous. And some days some of us are falling to pieces. And it's the other reflection of women, particularly, that have lived the experience, that are on different paths or at different stages, that can reflect back that self-care of like, hey, I've noticed that you might need some extra support, or have you thought about this in a way that drops the judgment and really opens the conversation of how do we share this wisdom? How do we support each other?
Yes.
How do we watch the women around us and partners and children? But, for me, mum's the heart of the home. Women are the core of how we give, and if we are depleted and exhausted and overwhelmed, we don't often have the capacity or the awareness to put self-care in place at that point in time. So it has to be the tiny daily practices.
I love reminding women that, as you said, we're often the barometer for the whole family, aren't we? If we're not taking care of our needs and that's showing in our interactions with our family, everybody's on edge,
And we've been brought up by a generation, I don't know about you, but definitely a generation of martyrs. They do everything. They just suck it up and not talk about it and hold it in and just get on with it. And that's chaos. That is all kinds of things flowing out at different inappropriate ways. And it's been a learning to let go of the own sense of perfectionism of what should happen, and really sinking into the experience of how do I care and love myself? What does that look like? And how do I model that? All of my children and my partner and my family and my community. How do I model that?
I think you've kind of led us into our next discussion point around some of the barriers to self-care. And I think, as you mentioned, how we're brought up and what we've seen modelled can be a really big barrier.
Yeah. Yeah. Becoming aware of our patterns is such a barrier. And having, I think one of the other barriers to women, particularly within the self-care realm, is that you giving to everybody else, it keeps the family balance. So when you start to change that dynamic, when you start to create some boundaries, dare I say, around giving to yourself and providing for others, but like providing for others in the way that we lead them to be able to give to themselves, rather than rushing into rescue and keeping everybody happy and keeping that dynamic really balanced. Yeah, the barriers are often ourselves first, I think. The permission to deeply care for yourself and provide love when that puts somebody else in an uncomfortable situation, particularly. How do we handle that? And how do we provide the safety for our families to know that the love is not conditional just because we're not sacrificing our own happiness, and teach them how to do that dance as well. So, I talk to a lot of women and they'll say, oh, time's my biggest issue, or money's my biggest issue. I don't have time and I don't have money. I'm like, 1%. One tiny percent is all we need. And that awareness shifts how you invest your time and how you invest your money, because you're no longer binging things that draw you deeper into that avoidance pattern of this is too hard to change yet. So, yeah.
Are there any other barriers that you see? You work with a lot of women in a lot of different capacities. Are there any barriers or themes that you see, apart from the ones we've spoken about, for women that just continue to arise?
I think particularly apart from the martyr, self-sacrifice, we are not taught this.
Yeah.
Nobody understands cycle from a deep perspective of being able to actually study with your cycle, eat with your cycle, live by your cycle. How do we use herbs with our cycle? I went to university and I still didn't understand how to biophysically support with herbs and seeds and cycle awareness on a much deeper level. We are inherently in a world that is linear, and we are not. We are fit snugly into a square box of being appropriate and doing the things and doing Monday to Friday and having all the aspects to the world that we live within. But I really feel like one of our biggest barriers to self-care is that we don't have the bridge of wisdom. We don't have the bridge of knowledge of how we can self-care, how we can work with our own cycles, because we've actively been disconnected from that wisdom over years and years and decades, with all kinds of, and like I love Jane Harbert Collins' work around, and she's got an amazing PDF that she's got on a website called Her Story. So for anyone that's interested in going into that, definitely go and look up the School of Shamanic Womancraft and Jane Harbert Collins, and Her Story is just a powerful understanding of why it is we don't know this, and why it is that we call it woo-woo and women's stuff. Like it's been so, I don't even know the word, but it's been put into the not okay realm. Like it's not professional to be
trivialized.
It's been trivialized.
Yeah.
And this is one of our most powerful tools, which is why it's been trivialized and why it's been disconnected. So go read Her Story. It's amazing to awaken that wisdom. But for me, radical self-care, cycle awareness, the barriers of not knowing how to do this and not being okay to actually create space within your life to make it a practice. So we might go to a yoga class as a practice. Okay? That's self-care. But I won't do a cycle check-in or actually meet the needs of my own cycle within that yoga class, because it's so generic that everyone's being taught the same thing. I'm not even being told, hey, if you're on your menstrual days, here's a version that you could do. If you're ovulating, great, you're going to be up in this posture. We've missed the core feminine framework in our education, most of us, even health professionals. So when we're going to ask for help or we're speaking to people around us, there is a generation of women now breaking the silence, speaking the truth, sharing this wisdom. Our children will not have this experience. They will have a different future. But the ripples of change and the awareness of that, while we're learning it and teaching our little children and our decade of humans before us, we're having to mother ourselves and teach ourselves at the same time. And that's cool.
I'd love to hear, Amanda, how you broke free of that square and started to really bring more cyclical awareness into your life.
Yeah, gosh, I always knew I wanted to work with women before it was like cool to have a niche. When naturopaths had to do everything, I was like, no, I'm just going to work with women. And they're like, well, you can't do that. You won't have enough clients. I was like, oh my God, that's all of my clients are women. So I started working at a fertility space at Sharky's, and we definitely worked with cycle awareness and bringing people aware of their cycle. I still felt fairly clinical in that time. At the same time, I started training at the Natural Birth Centre in Lismore. And while I was doing my studies with herbalism, alongside the tactile lived experience of, and I was 21, like I wasn't having babies at that point. But being around the birth portal, being around those major times of change where women are drawn into their being in such a deeper way, it was so interesting to watch the cycles. And what I saw first, what I became aware first of, was the bigger cycles. So the fertility cycle, the becoming mother cycle, the birth portal, and then the postpartum cycle. But what I was watching was the complete chaos of an unsupported matrescence process. So although we were providing clinical care, and then I went back and still searching, trained as a yoga therapist that was specifically for women and postpartum and prenatal and fertility. I was watching these beautiful mothers come back after going through the process that they were yearning for at 2 years, absolutely depleted and exhausted and overwhelmed and undersupported. And it set me off on a path of trying to understand what was this missing link? What was the bridge that we were missing? Because I was teaching them cycle awareness. I was teaching them how to read their cycle and the herbs to use and the data. And I was living my own cycle and I could feel the power within that. But really going into the process with the shamanic school was an awakening on a whole new level. And the journeying with women that held this traditional knowledge gave me the capacity to really deeply integrate it into, and it was years and years and years of, it's like any new language or any new skill, even though I'd lived it, to actually allow space for it in my life. My business is all set up within menstrual and lunar structures. I couldn't find anybody that was working in the modern kind of busy world that I was living in, because I was running 2 businesses and a swim school and had 3 little babies. And like, I'm that personality that loves being out and community and calling us all together, because I'm still in that phase of life, so I'm happy to do that. But really conscious that that may not be me forever. And that's not me losing anything. That's actually me growing in wisdom and changing what works for me. So yeah, cyclical living has been layers and layers and layers. The shamanic school was amazing to really sit within the wisdom of knowing this. And it was a reminding, an awakening. And it really felt like that process. So and interesting that, you know, when we look at the seasons of motherhood, that was around the summer of my motherhood. That was the awakening of motherhood, the highest point. And then it's been integration over the next 5 years for me. So, yeah.
A very eye-opening journey.
Just something I always knew was missing, but didn't know what it was that was missing. And actually, as a practitioner, I felt really uncomfortable. It's not that this is basic knowledge, but it wasn't something I'd ever been taught. And so I didn't have a tradition behind me. I didn't have a cultural tradition of behind me. It just was kind of left as, you know, oh yeah, you get a period. And you could get pregnant. That's kind of the extent of the awareness. So lifelong journey of like, how does my body work? Where is the power in my body, and how can I activate it? How can I live in a way that my kids, my boys and my daughter, all know that there are two different physiologies that drive two different kind of realities in the world. And regardless of how we present with gender, there are experiences when we have a female biology that give us the capacity to change how we work and live and care for ourselves.
Knowing what you know now about cycles and how deeply embedded that knowledge is into your everyday, would you like to share with us some of the practices that you like to weave in and how they look differently in different cycles, and whether that is the menstrual cycle or the other cycles that we were talking about that layer over the top of those?
Yeah, so the biggest question, and I think the biggest rhythm that we work with when we have an active menstrual cycle, and active menstrual cycle is if you have your ovaries and they're active. So even if there's been the womb that's been removed, we still have that internal drive that leads us, and that sort of core internal compass is really how I think of it. And then how does that interrelate with the moon? So, you know, where is our time of bleeding? And is that at the same time that the energy of the moon is also in that like winter, dark moon, that coming within, that time of menstruation, that time of deep dreaming? So in winter, in my dark moon, whether that's if you flow with the moon, so if you don't have an active menstrual cycle, if you're pregnant, if you're in postpartum without a cycle, if you have amenorrhea and there's no cycle present, or you're in that menopause transition, you flow with the moon. And so just like the phases of the menstrual cycle, the lunar aspect has a similar energy. So it either kind of is the lens that shines through into the reality of menstrual reality, wherever you are, or it's your main driver, and that's what you feel most aligned with. And the self-care rhythms and rituals that I have, one of them is the cycle awareness check-in. Where am I? How am I feeling? What do I need? The other one is more understood of having used cycle awareness for a long time and knowing that during my menstrual days, there's a particular brownie that I really love to eat. So I cook it the week before. So that's in my self-care, cooking your brownie the week before, because I still have to do it. It's the products that I'm using. It's the beautiful period undies or the reusable pads. It's the rituals around how do I honor the time of bleeding? Is it that I care for myself with different, and I use different oils and different massage scents, and I really look at deeply grounding and being in the practice of menstruation almost as that spiritual practice, as that time of opening and visioning. And I know that if I deeply rest here, if I give myself permission to be in that alchemic portal, what comes in the next week is just ridiculous and amazing. And my brain just goes, oh, and off I go and do all the things that have been waiting and are fine to wait just a minute. I really long for those days where we used to have the red tent and, you know, all the women would come together and look after each other and care for each other and be together. And so in a mini way, we do that within the Haven. when I step into the next week, when the energy's coming up, when we're moving into that open energy of the moon growing and ovulation energy stepping up, it's the time where curious conversations come in for me. It's the time where I'll do the things that I have been maybe putting off or have been avoiding for a little while. It's a time where things are easier. It's also the time where my self-care looks more functional. Like I walk and I do movement and I drink really uplifting teas, and I am getting into that space of making sure that my self-care is in doing practices in that aspect. So the herbs that I use don't need quite as much nervous system support. It's more digestive and liver support, and working with that like cleansing and detox energy.
Do you want to talk to some of those herbs that you love in that phase?
Yeah, so look, I love dandelion drinks. So dandelion's a big one for me, and whether it's grabbed from the garden or it's one of the coffees that you can grab from, from anywhere around you or your local herbalist. So teas are something that I bring in. I use a lot of peppermint in like the time of lifting in spring. Fermented foods I bring in a lot more. I bring a lot of nettle in at that time because I've just been through a bleed. So I'm rebuilding blood tone and building up that nourishment within my well-being as well. Some consistence for me, because I'm now in perimenopause in that transition decade. I do put nervous system supports in all cycle long now. So I've got withania and rhodiola within a tincture and some romania as well. So licorice usually features as well. I really want my herbs tincture wise. I want like like the milkshake bottles that you press down and you just dispense like a dose, almost like paint stirrers. But just so I can dose myself with the little different ones every day.
Yeah.
So when I move into ovulation, into that full summer energy, that's the time where I can fly off a little bit more. So sometimes I'll use, and I find like often we can get nervous system triggers around here as well, of being like really too busy. So the herbs that I'd use there might be more cooling. So they might be more digestive tonics and just bringing me down. So they come into the drinks that I use or the salads as well, like your mints in whatever you're having as well. I was going to say about ovulation, I use a lot of lemon balm.
Okay.
Like lemon balm is one of my favorites, particularly around lift time of like just making sure that I'm in my body.
Yes.
As
well.
Yeah. Sleep tends to be a big one around ovulation. We can find lots of people waking up, lots of liver triggers coming in. So depending on how that's happening, what my detox pathways are doing, or clients as well, how are we supporting the clearing? So whether that's bowels or skin, or how are we making sure that we're really opening those detox pathways and opening. I do a lot of moon bathing as well, so self-care. Don't know if that's herby, but I pick a lot of my herbs at the full moon. So I'm often like that, picking all the herbs and bringing all the love in. And then in the week leading up to cycle, so from ovulation, so my herbal medicine kind of pulses. My teas change because I craft them as we go. But my herbal tinctures, I start at menstruation and I stop at ovulation for phase 1. And then phase 2, I start at ovulation and I go all the way through. So they're slightly different as well because my hormonal triggers are different. My focus is different.
Yes.
So the self-care that comes in the second part of the cycle is more around nourishment and making sure that my nutritional status is really spot on, and also making sure that my nervous system isn't hyper triggering into that stealing of cortisol, and that my progesterone is really nourished and loved up. And so I do use a lot of chaste tree depending on the cycle, but particularly in that second part of the cycle, supporting with Agnus castus or chaste tree is really powerful. And I use a lot of my nervous system supports here. So whether that's valerian to get really beautiful sleep, but passion flower and melissa are two beautiful ones for me. They're nice and light. They just help with making sure that I'm a calm, happy, loving woman and mama. And then we step in. I use a lot of herbal steaming during the second part of my cycle as well, actually. So depending on, I use pessaries, vaginal, vulval pessaries and creams, and but I love doing steaming, particularly if you're not trying for conception. Like we are very not trying for conception. Um, we're past that point. But yeah, having a steam or a yoni steam is such a beautiful way for me in the week before the cycle begins to really nourish and open the womb and relax all of the musculature and work with that beautiful cleansing
What
energy
herbs
as
do you
well.
like to use in that regard?
Yeah, so it depends. I've done quite a few different ones. I always love to put rose in there because I think it's such a womb lung
Softening.
and opener. Um, I really love mugwort in anything. So I take it internally and I use it in the steam
Mm.
as well. I've got raspberry leaf that's growing wild, so that goes in. If it's something that I'm trying to bring heat into, sometimes I'll bring like my more warming herbs in. But often I'll use things like calendula, rose. If I'm looking to do a little bit of cleansing or I'm concerned about the microbiome, I might use like thyme or tulsi just as like the aromatics to clear and cleanse. I have a really good recipe as well. So if anybody wants to have a little recipe, we can put the
Yeah, that'd be
attachment up to
lovely.
what you're doing. Yeah. So
Mm.
the caveats would be don't steam if you are trying to keep things in within your womb. So
Mm.
if you're working towards pregnancy and you want to steam, do it earlier, do it before conception,
Yeah.
because the steam is about relaxation,
Relief.
opening,
Yeah.
cleansing,
Yeah.
clearing, nourishing.
Mm.
Those things also can help the cycle to begin.
Mm. Mm. Thank you so much, Amanda. That was such a beautiful overview of how you approach self-care, with cyclical living really being the foundation behind everything that happens. With that in mind, knowing that you are able to plan most of the time and that you've been able to bring self-care from being tucked in around the edges to being absolutely foundational to your day-to-day, what changes have you noticed in yourself and your life as a result of being able to have that knowledge and weave self-care in that way?
Life has definitely improved. Like
Yeah.
our relationships has improved out of sight because I know my own being in a totally different way.
Mm.
It has moved from me looking to other experts to help
Mm.
to me being the expert in my
Yeah.
body and having the confidence to really work with other practitioners and other therapists and to get the tools and the information that I need, but being the authority and being
Mm.
sovereign in
Mm.
knowing my own rhythms, because I can teach people rhythm and I can teach the energetics and the archetypes, but knowing yourself and
Mm.
knowing your own triggers and your own whispers and your own self care practices and having a basket. So, originally, I started with a self care basket because my was one of the awakening moments, right? One of the taps on the shoulders. My period products, when my daughter was born, were all down the bottom in the back shelf, hidden away, tucked behind. How many times do we tuck something up our sleeve and hide and run off to the toilet and not do anything? And it was a conscious choice to have an open door policy with my kids around health, around body awareness, around self love, and having to model it and work through it. Because I went from being a really tiny size 8 body to instantly turning into my mother overnight when I had a baby, and my body going into my maternal lineage of great, we are great baby makers and
Yes.
fabulous breastfeeders. But here's all of the body changes that go along with that, becoming
Yes.
mother. So it was a conscious decision to move through helping to reclaim my own comfort with cycle and awareness, bring in my partner along for the ride for that. He's the most educated male I know on birth, postpartum, pregnancy, fertility. Like, he knows all of the things. There's not a lot of barriers between us. And it means that he has a totally different understanding of me now, because even as the most educated person I can possibly find, he still has discomfort that has been embedded and groomed in him of don't talk about it, don't make a big deal about it, don't look at it sideways, don't bring it up, don't mention it.
Yeah.
Because the only times that it is mentioned is in a derogatory way, in the way that we're brought up. Like, oh, you must have your period, that's why you're cranky. So
Yes.
this becoming comfortable with ourselves, and then how do we invite, include, educate, role model, create boundaries of safety around us is such a journey.
And modeling that for your, yes, it did, absolutely. Modeling that also for your children, for your community, for those you work with. You know, what an amazing gift.
It has been life-changing. And really the purpose of the work that I do is, how do we as women reclaim this wisdom in whatever way you bring it forward into the world? But how do we do this for ourselves so that we stop feeling like we are being gaslit and screaming into the void of we're doing all the right things, we're fasting, we're exercising, we're eating the right foods, we're ticking all the boxes in life, and feeling like you are failing at every single one of them, because none of it is based on women. None of the recommendations have come through studies that actually allow for cycles. None of our blood assessments allow for cycle awareness, unless we are deeply diving into and reframing all of it. We are not going to get the answers that we need, and we need to start taking authority over that for ourselves and learning this and teaching our kids.
Such important work. Absolutely. You've shared your beautiful steaming ritual. I was wondering if there was any other recipe or herbal routine that you'd like to share with listeners that you love weaving in.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, I have so many. What would be a favourite? Oh, look, I'll go with vulva care, because I think nobody talks about this enough.
Yeah.
One of my favourite things that you definitely can find easily accessible is looking at using some sea buckthorn oil. So sea buckthorn oil is a fabulous care for any mucous membrane. You can use it in your mouth for ulcers. You can take it internally to help with your well-being, but it is fabulous for vaginal health. So it brings back moisture and nutrition and cellular well-being. And in times that we are low in estrogen, so that might be in perimenopause, that can be chaos. In postpartum, that can be present. In menopause, it's definitely present, is the low estrogen levels. Of how do we create well-being and care for those very sensitive mucous membranes. So I make a lot of pessaries out of using sea buckthorn oil and shea butter, some cacao as well. I think that's how you say it. Not the chocolate cacao, like the...
Yeah, cacao butter, yeah.
Cacao butter.
Yeah.
Don't use chocolate cacao. But really, and fennel oil. So fennel is such a powerful support for microbiome and well-being.
Yes.
Green tea is another favourite for me if you're doing rinses or washes. But we do not have enough awareness around cervical fluids.
Yes.
We're not taught around how to read our body and the microbiome, and particularly looking after our tissue, because, we all worry about it as we kind of go through that aging process. We put creams and lotions on our faces, not a lot on our vulvas.
No.
And I challenge everybody to go, this sea buckthorn oil, I go morning and night, like head to vulva. So it's really beautiful, but it is bright orange, so don't wear your favourite undies with it.
Your favourite white.
That's it. Be careful, be conscious.
That's a lovely one, Amanda. Thank you for sharing. My last question is always a tricky one for herbalists. I would love to know what your favourite herb is and why that is.
It's like talking about your favourite
I know.
child.
I know.
Okay. If I had a favourite, because I have a few, and I say, oh, this is one of my favourites, oh, she's one of my favourites, oh, this is really beautiful. I think at this time of life, for me, one of my favourite herbs, oh, goodness, I've got a few, but let's go with Withania, so ashwagandha.
Yeah.
I could go with the mushrooms, I could go with like lemon balm, like there's so many, but if we work with ashwagandha, ginkgo's another. Ginkgo's. See, now you're asking me, my brain's going
They're all
really fast.
coming out.
So if you go
Pick
with
me, pick
ashwagandha,
me.
look at ashwagandha, and just focus in there. Withania reminds me of the woman who walks the tightrope, who is holding the 15 spinning plates, that is doing all the things and having self-care and keeping all the plates spinning all of the time, but she is wired but absolutely exhausted. Withania is that nourishing support that comes in and really brings stability and grounding and healing for so much of that movement for the time of life that I think so many of the women that I work with are in. So that's probably one of my favorites at the moment.
And how do you like to weave Withania in what forms and in?
Yeah, there's a beautiful chai tea that Southern Light Herbals does, which has got Withania embedded within the chai. So I think if we can bring it into ritual and rhythm, it's beautiful. I don't know if I'd use valerian the same way because it's a bit like dirty old boot at night, but definitely within the chai. And I do love tinctures because I'm a take a shot a day kind of like, yep, taking my medicine and off I go.
Yes.
So the teas are beautiful when we're using lighter herbs, so lemon balm teas, oat straw. You're looking at nettle, the things that really bring us nourishment, but that can be sort of sweet. But some of these really deep, grounding, nourishing herbs, they're pretty bitter. So I think it's one big shot.
Yes, let's minimize the pain.
And I do the feet, like I'm like the shot, and then
The whole body.
The whole body reacts, and I'm like, I know I need it, I know, and I'll smell it, and it'll smell like I need to take this.
Your body's asking.
Yeah, but then my kids are like, you are hopeless. I'm like, listen, it's a taste texture thing. I've done it forever. It's fine. I just do it.
Oh, dear. Now, Amanda, what have you got up that is shining in your world? What have you got coming up?
Yeah, gosh. So we're living in the most amazing space in Morpeth at the moment in New South Wales in the Hunter Valley. And I'm blessed to caretake the women's convent that's here. So I actually have a prayer hall in my house, which is just spectacular, and a bit of a witchy fairy ring in the front garden under the trees, and a clinic room that's just so beautiful and vibrant. So we hold events locally. We've got retreats that come particularly for women wanting to do this work of reclaiming and understanding their well-being. We've got women's circles that happen just about every month or every second month.
Are they in person, those ones?
Yeah, those ones are in person. And the Queen's Table is our last in-person event, which is a gathering of women. We all go out dressed up and loved up and share wisdom with each other around all the states of transition. So those are in-person events. And then I do a lot of work online. So I work with a lot of women and healers and a lot of practitioners actually now, that to support them to bridge the gap between the medical realm and the known, and how we integrate cycle awareness and well-being. And the women I work with, we work through a season together. So whether that's 3 months or 12 months, it's about really integrating this into your life and your well-being practices so that you can step through whatever transition is your next transition with health and vitality. So that's really where my drive has been. So I've got a couple of, I'm speaking for a couple of the herbal medicine companies coming up, which will be really exciting to share some wisdom out further and wider for all of our practitioners. But we've got art therapists and nutritionists and women that are just ready to do business and holistic wellbeing with feminine rhythms as their base, because in our society there's not a lot of us that are doing it yet.
No.
And so we all come together and we do it together, and we
and
celebrate
the ripples flow.
Yeah, and we celebrate each other, because it's all stages of growth and understanding and unpacking this in a bigger way to then go out and offer it in the world. So some of those therapists go and offer mother-daughter workshops and puberty education. Some of them go into matrescence care and fertility or postpartum births. And a lot of women now are moving into supporting the menstrual menopause transition and that decade-long process of becoming a Marga, becoming the wise woman, and thriving in that. Because, gosh, when empowered Margas are here, watch out, the world just changes. That's where my vision is. So yeah, you'll see there'll be there's always free events that pop up. We do lots of mistress classes. So if you're interested in finding out more, the website's got tons of information. And the mistress classes are a way to understand some of these cycle awareness concepts alongside integrating it into your life and how that works for you.
Beautiful. And we will share details of ways that everybody can connect with you in the beautiful offerings that you have available. Thank you so much, Amanda. I've really enjoyed this chat, and there's so much in this beautiful conversation that people will be able to take with them.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much for having me on as well. I really appreciate it. One more thing I was going to say is I'm slowly transitioning out of socials, apart from marketing and being present there. So all of my online community, so there's a free online community where you can just tap in and access free meditations and cycle guides and get to know the women that are doing this work. I'll pop a link in so that you've got access to that as well.
That sounds lovely, a beautiful way to connect.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Amanda.
Gorgeous.
I'm so glad you tuned into this episode of Self-Care with Herbs, a segment of the Elder Tree podcast. The Elder Tree is a non-profit dedicated to putting the medicine in the hands of the people through grassroots herbal education and earth skills, weaving a strong community of herbalists, healers and plant folk in Australia. If you'd like to dive a little deeper, you can head over to our Patreon, the Elder Tree Trove, to access special content from our podcast guests. I hope you found something in this episode that has inspired you to begin to lean into those plant allies and to experience your practice of self-care blossoming and blooming. I look forward to sharing more ways you can weave plant medicine into your days next month.